Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 135. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we are going to talk about Triplemania 30th, Chapter 2 out of Tijuana, Baja California. This show happened on June 18th, 2022. I thought this show was actually really good, far better than the one in Monterrey from the previous, from a couple of months prior to this. This was a little bit better. It kind of seemed like it was a little bit better planned out. To be fair, also, it kind of they were able to cut down the Ruleta matches now that they only had the semifinals, were a lot stronger. Although I would even say the first round wasn't as bad as I think people expected. The ones that you kind of knew were going to be bad kind of were what you expected, but the ones that you weren't really sure about ended up being a lot better than one would have hoped for. And in this the semifinals, I thought they were both really good matches, and it really has turned this the Ruleta de la Muerte, which initially we kind of all pointed out all the old guys involved in it. It actually did end up living up to what I think AAA intended it to be, which was, make a very important mask tournament mean something. And I think that they've been able to pull that off across what would be the three Triplemanias, with the final happening on the Mexico City show in October. I think they did a great job of that. Also, they kind of had a more, kind of felt a little bit more condensed, like they didn't have as much thrown into the show for whatever reason. It just came off like they had a little bit more going on, a little bit more balance, a little bit more thought put into what was going to happen on this show, which can be very difficult because as anybody who actually watches the TV show would probably be a little bit more confused because they tend to do stuff that doesn't really follow what's happening on the TV show. But I thought this was a better show than a better version of Triplemania. I thought Chapter 2 was better than Chapter 1. I think this show still had the same problem that the previous one had, which was they didn't mic the crowd. So you saw a lot of people comment on that about how the crowd seemed dead. But I think if you ask people that were there live at the show, they would probably have a completely different opinion on that. They would probably tell you that the people were actually legitimately loud and cheering for obviously who they were rooting for. But on the feed itself, it just, because they're miking, they don't have they're kind of having the announcers be louder than the fans. So you hear the announcers, which sound great. Like, I'm sure, like, if you have a huge ego as an announcer, you're probably really ecstatic because you guys, they sound very, you could understand everything they're saying. There's no misunderstanding or mishearing somebody because, the crowd might be, at some point might get louder. This doesn't happen on this, of course, because of the mic. There is no mic for the audience, which I think it kills it off because, like, you don't get the feel that the fans are as excited as you might actually think they are, because the matches themselves were, for the most part, pretty good. And I would say this show actually, start to finish, other than I think Copa Triplemania, which I don't really ever expect much from, I thought the majority of these matches were good. I'm trying to think if there was anything that I thought was bad. No, actually, this was probably a show where I thought, other than Copa Triplemania, and I don't think Copa Triplemania was awful. It was just not that great. Just an okay match. But and even the cage match that opened the show, I didn't think was, I think it went a little too long, but it wasn't a bad match. It had a really strong finish, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I would say from start to finish, this was a show that featured a lot of good to great matches. And that's, I mean, for what it was, that's really, it's surprising because AAA has a habit of shooting themselves in their own feet just because they'll overbook stuff. And I thought this show was very well booked, very well. I think it went a little too long. I think the show probably went almost 5 hours. It went more than 4.5 hours. The feed I was watching it on went over 4.5 hours, but I think it might have gone at least almost 5 hours because at certain points they lost the feed of what was airing. And they also cut away a few times when there was some nonsense on the show. I would say probably was closer to 4:45 probably. But like I said, this is a strong show. If you're gonna want to watch, if you only have time to watch one thing or a couple of things, I would say watch the masked matches, the Ruleta de la Muerte matches, and the 5-way match with that had Fenix, Hijo de Kingo, Laredo Kid, Bandito, and Taurus. I would say those are the matches you definitely want to watch. And then the other stuff was actually I think I would even say that honestly, I think this is, like I said, I think this is the one show where you could actually recommend every single, like if you start watching everything after Copa Triplemania, which would be about an hour and a half in, you should be okay. The earlier stuff, I mean, honestly, unless you really need to watch Copa Triplemania and the cage match that leads to the mask match, I think that would be really, only if you have time, you should watch those. It's not really necessary if you want to cut down on the amount you're watching, because you only have a limited amount of time to watch Triplemania or a AAA show. But I thought this was a good show. Like I said, the show opened with the cage match, which featured 7 women. And I should say the 7 women that were involved were Chica Tormenta, Flammer, La Hiedra, Sexy Star, Lady Shani, Maravilla, and Reina Dorada. Sexy Star, of course, this being the new version of Sexy Star. It ended up with Chica Tormenta and Flammer being the last 2 in the cage, which meant that they would advance to the mask match later on the show. The order of escape was Reina Dorada, Sexy Star, Lady Shani, followed by La Hiedra and Maravilla. I thought this match went a little too long. I think it went over 20 minutes. I think it was almost 30 minutes, but I think if they would have cut down at least 10 minutes of this match, I think it would have been so much better, because midway through the match, I just kind of started thinking this was a little bit long and wasn't that great. And then they closed it out really strong with the way Maravilla and La Hiedra escaped and then left their partner Flammer in the ring with Chica Tormenta in the cage, which I thought was a cool... I'm a little surprised, just because I wouldn't have expected them to end with Chica Tormenta and Flammer in the final. But to be fair, I think other than Lady Shani, I think everybody else I kind of thought maybe had there was an odd chance that they would lose their mask on this show, because there's not a female on the roster where I think, oh, she's never going to lose her mask. Like, there's no Hijo de Santo or Mystico in the women's division where you think they're not going to lose their mask. So it could have been anybody, and Chica Tormenta and Flammer ended up being the final 2, which perfectly fine. I thought that, like I said, the closing segment of the final couple minutes of this match were great. To be honest, I think all the women on this in this match were really good. Reina Dorada mostly worked independent shows, and her coming in for this, I thought was kind of saying maybe that she would be the one that would lose her mask, but she ended up being the first one out, and she looked like she could be somebody that they should really bring back to the promotion, because she looks like she has some talent. The one thing I will say, that all 7 women on this in this match, not only did they show that they had some talent, they actually have the look that I think AAA would really want to kind of promote. Unfortunately, this is the wrestling industry. There's still a very much not just talent. You either have to be you could be talented, be charismatic, or have the look. And sometimes you have one person who has all 3 things, and that's great. Sometimes you have some that maybe just have one thing. I think the all 7 women in this match not only have looks, but have the ability, the talent. I don't know if they're as charismatic. I think of all of them, I think the one that might have the most charisma is probably Maravilla, because I don't think La Hiedra has, and maybe La Hiedra also, but I think Maravilla probably is the one that kind of has shown it more than anybody else. But they all can work, and they all have they all have the look, and I think that's something that definitely they're going to be probably used more frequently, and especially Flammer. Flammer definitely has a look, which I kind of thought maybe she was going to be the one that was going to lose the mask. I kind of expected somebody that was more of a regular to end up being in the final. Chica Tormenta and Flammer have been on more frequently in the, obviously coming in more of the newish female wrestlers on the roster, but they've been around a little bit. At least they've been here through 2022. So you kind of expected them. There was a slight chance that one of them would have been in the final. But I think I was more surprised that they didn't go with Lady Shani or La Hiedra maybe winning the mask match. But instead they had them advance, survive the cage match. Like I said, that was a good way to open. Unfortunately, they then went for like a 20-30 minute break. I think this must have been like the beginning for the whatever, if they were going to be on Fight TV or whatever didn't air the cage match. This was pretty much the time they used to fill. Also, also having been on shows where the promoter decided to run a cage match before a main event, whenever they put up a cage match before another match that isn't in the cage, you're also going to have that period where there's about a 10-15 minute time, sometimes even longer, where they're taking down the cage. And that pretty much seemed to be what was also the main reason why there was that big break in between this match and Copa Triplemania. I thought Copa Triplemania was okay. I'm still not a big fan of the Copa Triplemanias. I'm not a big Battle Royal fan. Very rarely unless you're going to do something where it's like a pinfall or submission type of thing, and you allow guys to work, do dives and stuff like that. It doesn't really do anything for me now. I mean, we're past the point where Battle Royals, they were cool like back in the 80s and stuff like that. Even like the Royal Rumble, I still could get that. I could still see that. And of course, Copa Triplemania has a bit of the Royal Rumble rules, but still, it's just not my thing. But Nino Hamburguesa beat Mamba to win Copa Triplemania. Microman won the first one, so I'm guessing maybe like they do something later on where they do the finalists of Copa Triplemania maybe have a match or something. I don't know. But other participants in this were Ray Cholo, who I think people said was on Viano 3 Jr. under the mask. Mamba was also obviously on it. Mr. Iguana, Dulce Canela, Abismo Negro Jr., Heavy Metal, Charlie Manson, Pagano, Cibernetico, Bestia 666, The Mecha Wolf, and Vampiro. Also getting involved in the match were Damien 666 and Ray Horace. They kind of got involved kind of to pop the crowd that, they're of course Tijuana idols, guys who have been part of that scene for a long time. Damien 666 is basically a legend in that city. So that was kind of cool to see that. Really, I thought this was actually there were moments where I thought was pretty good, and there was moments where it just seemed like it was really boring. I think the one thing that I got out of it was that they seemed to be setting up a Pagano Cibernetico rivalry, maybe leading up to a hair match. Why anybody would care about Pagano losing his hair in a hair match when he doesn't have that much, I don't think that matters so much as the fact that Pagano versus Cibernetico would be quite the match. It could either be a horrible match, a match that's going to feature a ton of interference, and of course Pagano using numerous weapons to end up taking bumps onto. We've constantly seen him go through tables and tables with fire that he sets up, which leads to some interesting moments in the match. And I think that's something that I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that we see at the final Triplemania. But like I said, Nino Hamburguesa wins the Copa Triplemania. Not much to this match, but it's kind of a good filler for what's to come. Because after this match, I thought everything after this was really good. The third match on the card was Fenix beating Hijo de Vikingo, Laredo Kid, Bandito, and Taurus to win the AAA World Cruiserweight and AAA Latin American titles. I don't know why Hijo de Vikingo was in this match when he's the AAA World Mega Champion. Obviously, the main reason and the only reason I could think of why he is in this match was because he's great and they wanted to have him on the show. And obviously, this was the one spot where they could put him in. It would have been kind of interesting if he would have won those titles, which would have been fine. I mean, maybe make him a Triple Crown champion. But to be honest, like, you don't really see a world champion going after the secondary title of a, you don't see if like in the old days when somebody like was a WWE world champion, you didn't see him going after the Intercontinental title while he's the world champion, or like in the old day the NWA World Heavyweight Champion going after the US title. That's kind of just weird. Maybe if they were all world titles like from two different organizations, then it would make sense, but these were within AAA, and the only reason he was in the match was that they wanted to have him on that, obviously. And the other reasons, I think they're trying to build up a Hijo de Vikingo Fenix title match at some point, maybe at Triplemania 30th in Mexico City. But I think that was the main reason. I thought this was an excellent match. Lots of crazy dives. Taurus looking like an absolute beast. I really dig that he uses a headbutt the way he uses it. Like, since he's, a bull, he's going to use it in a way where it's going to be very effective. Fenix ended up winning after a double stomp on Taurus. Bandito was stretchered out after the match, which later on he mentioned he was fine. He's still out a couple of more weeks at the time of this recording. So he did, it was a pretty nasty bump that he took. He ended up landing, it was really bad. It looked like he landed head back, like his head twisted onto the mat. It looked really bad, but glad he's doing okay. One of my favorite spots in this match was really, and this is why Hijo Vikingo's in this match. He did this really cool, like a 630 into a senton back into the ring, which I thought was really cool. And then he did also like a 630 into a Frankenstein. It might have been a 450. I don't know. I stopped counting. All I know is he did a twist and did and landed into a Frankensteiner, which I thought was really cool. He's just very innovative, really creative. I think people are still waiting for him to get his visa so he becomes a regular wrestling outside of Mexico, which he's going to become one of the most regularly used guys. Hopefully he gets the same opportunities that Rey Mysterio Jr. did, because I think he has that type of potential. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a huge draw as a single star in Mexico, but I think what's going to end up happening is going to he has the potential to be like a Rey Mysterio Jr. type, where he's so innovative and so creative. Against the right opponents, he's going to have awesome feuds. We saw with Rey Mysterio Jr. early in his career when he had with Psychosis, and later Juventud Guerrera, and then with when he came to the U.S. with Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko. So I kind of see that happening with Hijo Vikingo, and then obviously Rey Mysterio then later became a world champion. So I could see that happening with Hijo Vikingo as well. I don't know if. I think the language barrier is going to be the one thing that they're going to hold against him, but he should be somebody that can become a huge star, not in the traditional sense where you're thinking big drawing card, record attendance within Mexico, because I think that's the big separation between Rey Mysterio Jr. as a huge star in Mexico. Like, if you think of him as far as greatest luchadors of all time, he's a huge star everywhere, but he doesn't have that. The time in Mexico where he was like the big star, the main guy. He wasn't like El Santo or Blue Demon or Mil Mascaras, Paraguayo, who had amazing runs as single stars headlining in Mexico. But they were, but what he has is that he became such an innovator and such a big international star that only rivaling Mil Mascaras. I could see that happening with Hijo Vikingo as well. It's one of those things where there's there's different levels of superstars. There's not just one clear cut way. Like, it's just because of, especially nowadays where we don't really it's very different from seeing you'll have like the Mystico boom. Mystico was a huge star, but then there was also, not only was it Mystico that was a huge star during that time period, you had Paraguayo Jr., Dr. Wagner Jr., guys who were kind of becoming big names during that time period as well. Somebody like Cibernetico, AAA was selling out big shows, and Cibernetico and La Parca, their version of La Parca was, the second version of La Parca were guys who were the main event guys during that time period. And, nobody thinks of them as like these huge stars, but they really were. I could see that. Yeah, that's what I think there's a big separation with that. I'm going off the subject from this match, but I thought this was an excellent match. All 5 of the guys were fantastic. Bandito, it's interesting because if you look at this as far as star power in this match, this might be like the most star powered match amongst diehard lucha fans. But look, it's the 3rd match on the card, and you're looking at probably 5 of the 6 or 7 best luchadors right now. And, it's funny because you look at the guys and, everybody has a different opinion of how they would rank these guys. To me, like, if you told me rank the 5 guys in the match, I would put Hijo Vikingo at number 1. Fenix, to me, would be second, just because I think he's in a tag team with his brother. And I think sometimes that, I think that kind of hurts a lot of like guys who are trying to like who could be huge single stars. I think it's going to happen with Dragon Lee also. They could be huge single stars, but they're kind of being identified in a tag team, and that kind of like drops them a notch. But I think Fenix could be a huge star. I would put Bandito third, just because I think he has of the guys in this match, I think he has the most charisma out of all of them. Even with the mask on, he has a lot of charisma, a great personality, very talented wrestler. I'm surprised there's not more of a request to have him join AEW or WWE, because he does have that personality. I would put Taurus fourth, and then Laredo Kid fifth. And that's not even a knock on Laredo Kid, because some people might actually put him ahead. Some people, then you could totally change how you would rank these guys, and then be perfectly fine. But you put those 5 guys in a match, and it's going to be amazing. And this was really good. Oddly enough, even though I thought this was a really good match, I don't know if I would actually rank it as the best match on the show, but it would have to be up there. I think you can make a case for a 3-way tie between this and the 2 Ruleta matches, because of how good the Ruleta matches were. After the match, they had Taya appear, and she talked about offering a title match to the winner of the women's mask match, and she also challenged Thunder Rosa to a match. Thunder Rosa saw the challenge while she was at an event in Los Angeles, and then also Taya mentioned that there was going to be a new faction being formed very soon that included herself and the Lucha Brothers, and I guess it would include other people. But she basically said that for the moment she wasn't going to say much, because this was to come later on. I don't know what the faction would be, but the fact that it already starts with Taya and Fenix and Pentagon Jr., already a strong crew. Hopefully they bring in somebody who's maybe like one person that's kind of a newer face that they maybe want to elevate. But maybe 1 or 2 new faces that they want to elevate. But sounds like an interesting faction. Maybe something that they're going to use across the wrestling globe. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just going to be in it could be in AAA, it could be in AEW, Impact, and other places. I think that would be kind of cool. That was then followed by Conan being honored for his years in wrestling. They showed a really cool video of his career, including some highlights of him in Arena Mexico and WCW, which I thought was funny. I think it's kind of interesting what would catch them more heat, airing clips of Conan in Arena Mexico or in WCW, which I'm assuming they did not get any permission to do either one. And for the most part, what they ended up doing was just they kind of covered it up a bit by not showing it too much. They would go back and forth between showing the video and showing Conan in the ring with his reaction and some of the some crowd shots. Conan then thanked the fans and then joked with Maricela Peña that it was about time that they honored him, that he had been waiting all this time. Jesus Zuniga then told him that there was a little bit more of a surprise to come, and out came, they actually played the Santana song that is the one that they used for La Familia de Tijuana for the longest time, for decades. And out came Damien 666, Bestia 666, the Mecha Wolf, Taya, Ray Horus, and Ray Phoenix. They came out and gave Conan an award. A lot of fans were chanting for Nicho to show up. A few were chanting for Halloween. Conan named several who helped him out and praised Maricela Peña. Among the people that he actually thanked were, of course, Antonio Peña, Paco Alonso, Rey Mysterio Sr. There were a lot of people that he thanked. I was really surprised that he thanked... I wasn't surprised that he thanked Paco Alonso, just because, it's in AAA. I think the fact that you wouldn't hear this, you would never hear that on a CMLL show, but you would hear it on a AAA show. The closest thing we've had to CMLL kind of recognizing that AAA exists was the fact that they had La Hiedra. They allowed La Hiedra to be in the ring with Sangre Chicana last year when they honored him. But other than that, they very rarely, and they didn't even acknowledge her. They just acknowledged her as one of Sangre Chicana's daughters, kind of just like put her in the group. And the fact that, that's something that if you're going to want to do something to honor somebody on a CMLL show, you're just going to have to accept their rules of not wanting to recognize. Do you sometimes have some of the guys, when they do appearances on CMLL and Forma, guys who worked in AAA, they'll sometimes let it slip. That when they're talking about something about AAA, they'll talk about the other company, but sometimes guys will like totally forget and just mention AAA. And then quickly catch themselves and say, well, the other company. But I thought that was kind of a cool thing to see. After Conan was honored, what followed was one of the Ruleta de la Muerte semifinal matches as Blue Demon Jr. beat Pentagon Jr. Blue Demon Jr. won with the Canadian Destroyer through a table. He actually used a hammer to hurt Penta while on the top rope, and then did the Canadian Destroyer through the table. With the loss, Pentagon Jr. advanced to the final. I thought it was cool. Pentagon Jr. The cool thing to begin with for the Ruleta de la Muerte matches was that they did cool videos for every single one of them. They told you a little bit about their careers, the history of them, some of their wins and loss, big matches, titles they've won, masks they won, hair matches they've won, memorable moments. I thought that was really cool that they did that. They did that with both of these guys, with all four of them. Another thing that happened was Pentagon Jr. in his entrance, he had rapper Muelas de Gallo accompany him and rap while he came in. I know who that guy is mostly because he does a podcast about Lucha Libre, which is actually pretty good, actually really good, where they get a lot of guests on, and it's a really entertaining podcast. And he's a big fan, Lucha fan, so it was kind of cool to see that he did that. The match itself was really good. I would say it's up. It was up. I probably would put it behind the Viano. I would say it was up there. I would say that along with the Viano 4 Psycho Clown and the 5-way match were probably were kind of all grouped together as good to great matches. I don't think any of the matches on this show topped the LA Park Viano 4 match. I think that's the one thing that the Monterrey show had. I don't think any of these matches matched the energy that was in that match between Viano 4 and LA Park, just because the way it started, the fact we'll get into more detail about that, because obviously Viano 4 couldn't start that way, but these matches were really good. One thing I wanted to say is, like, for the longest time, Blue Demon Jr. and a lot of us, it's kind of interesting because you have a lot of fans who don't really follow they're more casual Lucha Libre fans. So to them, when they see Blue Demon Jr., they think of him as a legend because they kind of group him and Blue Demon, the original, together, and they don't realize that this guy has his own different legacy, his own career, and he is not Blue Demon. Like, they don't have anywhere near the level career, and also he never had the skill that Blue Demon had. Blue Demon Jr., for the most part, I would say his early career, really nothing that memorable, other than, him having the Blue Demon name. And I would say maybe like teaming up with El Hijo del Santo and then feuding with him. Maybe his matches with Blue Panther. There's been a few things that he's done early in his career that I would say were good, but I would say for the most part, he was just another, luchador, like really, like if he didn't have the Blue Demon name, he was very close to being in that group of like Hijo del Solitario and guys like that were kind of like, juniors that weren't quite the level of the person that they followed. But for whatever reason, once he reached a certain age, getting older, past 50, he has had for whatever reason, a career resurgence. I mean, and I don't know if it's a resurgence, but I think it kind of worked the fact that he's not a technical anymore. He's more of a rudo, and he doesn't do he's more of a slower brawling type of wrestler. It has really worked for him. He's so much better as a wrestler now than he was when he was younger. Some wrestlers, and that's the thing. Like, if you look at a lot of pro wrestling, if you're following wrestlers' careers, a lot of them kind of blossom at a certain stage. Like, some guys are just natural and they get it right away, and they're great from the moment they step into the ring at, whatever age, 18, 20, 21, 25. They're just great at the moment they're in there. But then other guys, it takes a couple of years. Maybe they might have been in wrestling for 10 years, and suddenly it just clicks and they're really good. It just happens. And I think that's happening with Blue Demon Jr., where he's kind of figured out a formula of what his type of match is going to be and what he wants to do in a match. And, it's not even like a thing where it's like, oh, he's not going to like cooperate with the guy, because he really him and Penta really had some really good moments in that match. And, he's figured out the whole thing about the gimmick with the hammer and stuff like that. I think that's really helped him. So I think when people talk about luchadors really not reaching, they don't peak until they're 50. there might be some a valid case for that. I think it'd be kind of interesting to kind of look at guys, luchadors that kind of didn't do too much prior to being 40 years old. I would say probably 40, 45 years old, and then look at them post 40, 45 years old and see what they did afterwards. Because there's a lot of guys who maybe like kind of like that was kind of like the time where their career's starting to, dwindle, and they're just living off their name. And then there's other guys who kind of just pick up the pace and get really good, or they're just more like kind of viewed at a different level. And I think that's happening with Blue Demon Jr. I thought it was kind of cool that at the end, they really kind of built up the fact that Blue Demon Jr. supposedly helped Pentagon Jr. early in his career. Penta said that he gave him a lot of advice and, was very willing to help with him. So at the end, like, Blue Demon Jr., after he like pretty much beat him in a pretty rudo sort of way, afterwards you could see him kind of like talking to Penta and then like calling for help for what he said was his friend. And I thought that was a cool way to end the match. And I thought that was a really good match. Highly recommend watching this match. Like I said, this was a really strong show. After that match, we had Matt Hardy. They aired a video of Matt Hardy apologizing for Jeff Hardy not being able to wrestle on Triplemania. He then introduced Johnny Caballero as Johnny Hardy, who ended up doing some of Jeff's dancing during the video. Matt then gave Johnny a gift from Jeff, which was the arm sleeve. And then Johnny then suggested that they should team in the U.S. as well. Matt kind of didn't seem that interested in that. He kind of just told him that it was more of a one-time thing for Triplemania and suggested maybe in Mexico, but I don't think he was that interested in teaming with him outside of Mexico. We then get to the next match, which was the mass match between Flammer and Chica Tormenta. They did mention that this was a no DQ match. Flammer ended up beating Chica Tormenta. Both women were accompanied by their husbands. Chica Tormenta's husband, Reiko, and Flammer's husband, the Tiger, were their seconds. And they also got very much involved, which I think actually helped the match. The fact that they got involved. At one point early in the match, they got involved. And the women actually stopped them and started like telling them to get out of the ring, that they shouldn't interfere, that it was their match, that they wanted to decide it. And they kept going on. They kept the match continued, and they didn't get involved until the Vipers came out and actually started helping Chica Tormenta. I think it was Toxin and Abismo Negro Jr. that went in to help Chica Tormenta. And then Maravilla and La Hiedra, the members of Las Toxicas, came out and helped their partner Flammer. Then the husbands finally got back involved. So everybody was getting involved, including the referees. So you actually had all this involvement throughout. Lots of interference. But in the end, Flammer ended up beating Chica Tormenta. Good match. I thought this was a really good match. Flammer was really good. She did this Super Frankensteiner, and I think that's when she went for the pin. But the referee, I think it was Marty Elias that was counting, and I think he was counting 3, but then I guess he noticed Chica Tormenta's shoulder was up, so he stopped the count. And it kind of seemed like from the reaction of the Tiger and Flammer, it kind of seemed like they thought there was something up with what was going on, which reminds me every time I see something like that where maybe there's a brief second where maybe it's a botch or something, or a mistimed spot or something, that whenever everybody would talk about what if so and so double crosses somebody during a mass match, and that crossed my mind briefly during that, but obviously they ended up just going on, and Lady Flammer ended up beating Chica Tormenta. Good match. After the match, Red Flammer, who is Flammer's dad, who is a long-time wrestler in Monterrey, came out along with the Tiger and Flammer's little son. They all came out to celebrate with Flammer. Chica Tormenta then unmasked as Cristina Arspieta Ramirez, 16 years, a pro wrestler from Guadalajara. She took off her mask, and at first she told Flammer that the feud, she might have won the battle, but the feud was still on. The war was still going on. And so I guess we're still going to get a few more matchups between these two. I came up with something creative for after I get done with this. I'm going to go through my idea for Triplemania 30 in Mexico City. I have a couple of ideas that maybe AAA might, some stuff that they could actually do. I don't know if they would do it, but it'd be kind of cool. Maybe if they don't do it at Triplemania, it's something they could do on another show. This idea that I have for what their feud is, and you could bring in some other people because it makes a little more sense. To be fair, also, AAA moves so quickly that it's possible that by the time this idea comes out, there might be some changes to whoever's like involved in the matches, so it wouldn't matter. But like I said, I thought this was a good match, very entertaining. Flammer is really good. Chica Tormenta's really good as well. AAA's women's division has a lot of strong talent. I don't know if there's a way to like. I think the best way they could use them is the way they're using them. But at the same time, I also think what also hurt them in the past was the whole, they constantly had Hijo Tirantes involved in so many of the things that it kind of took away from the women. And I think now it's kind of starting to like, even though he still gets involved, they're finding a way where, hey, like we could put them in these mixed tags. We could put them in these other matches. It doesn't just have to be singles matches. And now you're kind of getting a little bit more attention for the women's division, which I think is a lot stronger than it has been in the past. The sixth match on the show was Psycho Clown beating Viano 4 in the Ruleta de la Muerte semifinal. Psycho Clown got the win after using an air raid crash onto thumbtacks. Viano 4, with the loss, advances to the mass final on October 15th in Mexico City against Pentagon Jr. One of the things I thought was funny was Carlos Cabrera was, you could tell he kind of got the wrong information because he was getting the wrong Brazo, who was the father of Psycho Clown. He accidentally said it was Brazo de Oro when it's actually Brazo de Plata, who's Psycho Clown's dad. He also dedicated the match to him. I thought during this match there was this really cool section where Hugo Savinovich starts talking about how he used to watch wrestling from the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles, California, and he remembers watching Rey Mendoza wrestle. And then he also talks about how, I think at one point Psycho Clown uses a DDT. And then he talks about how Black Gordman had invented that move and talked about it, calling it the Diamond Twist, or I think he called it the Corlolinda or something like that. But he starts talking about the Red Devils, the tag team of Black Gordman and the Great Goliath. I thought that was a really good moment within the announcers where they're just talking about some old stuff. And Carlos Cabrera then came back and started talking about the first Triplemania, talking about Conan versus Cien Caras and bringing up Jake Roberts because obviously he's the one who made the DDT famous. I thought that was probably, like, to me, because the announcing for AAA very much depends on Jose Manuel Guillen because he's the only one that really keeps up with everybody on the roster, knows who everybody is, not only within AAA, but because of Mas Lucha, he pretty much knows all these other wrestlers that they bring in. He's familiar with them. He's familiar with the guys that worked CMLL. So he's already well more prepared than most people who are going to call AAA shows. But Hugo Savinovich and Carlos Cabrera in this moment, I kind of thought, okay, now it's not just, the Hugo Savinovich gimmicky stuff where he's yelling stuff out. I thought this was really cool that they were able to bring that in. And for somebody who's a big fan of just wrestling over the, not just from present day, but the past, I really marked out for that stuff. And I thought they did a great job calling, for the most, throughout the show, I thought they did a great job. And it kind of, I think that one picture of Hugo Savinovich, there was a picture that was making the rounds on social media. There was like this white stain on the announcer's table, and a lot of people made this big thing where it kind of looked like it might have been cocaine. So it became this whole thing because of obviously there's a history for Hugo dealing with that with substance abuse and stuff like that, and they made this big deal about that. And I think one of the English commentators tweeted out a picture about it, like, relax, it's paint. And because he took, not only what did he show that, but he showed that there was more of that stuff throughout on the table. There was like paint. I guess they didn't cover up the table while they were painting the little the room. But I thought that was funny that they focused so much on that when, the reality was that they did a really solid job on calling the show itself. Really fun. I think we get lost on the whole atanga and all that stuff, the screaming. But Hugo did a really solid job. I really enjoyed his commentary on this show. And this match between Psycho Clown and Viano 4 was a war. The one thing, like I said earlier when I was saying that, the one big difference between this match, between Psycho Clown, Viano 4, and Viano 4 and LA Park was when the LA Park Viano 4 match happened. I really dug the very start of it where Viano 4 was like doing a stance where he was ready for battle. He was ready to go to war. So he stood at the entrance getting ready for LA Park. And that was like what they were able to do. Whereas in this match, they weren't able to do that quickly. They still did it like a little bit. They still brawled right away. But Viano 4 couldn't really step out and like kind of like prepare on the entrance ramp because Psycho Clown came out with his two sons who were dressed as him, and they were dancing with him. And I thought it was funny because one of the little boys was really into the music and doing a lot of like very flashy. You could tell he's the extrovert of the brothers, and the other one was a little bit more laid back, very quiet. So you couldn't get Viano 4 to go out there and like attack him. Although I'm guessing the fact that Psycho Clown's sons are around wrestling even at that age, and Nero Casas has talked about the kids. Those are Nero Casas' grandchildren. For those who aren't familiar with the whole Psycho Clown family history, Psycho Clown's wife is Nero Casas' daughter, and you'll see those kids sometimes hanging out with Nero Casas, and sometimes you'll see them hanging out with Psycho Clown, so at shows. And so I think those kids are a little bit well prepared for that. I would be shocked if they already know how to take bumps from wrestlers. But I thought that was a cool like little entrance. But then the match itself, I think the one difference was that I think LA Park and Viano 4 kind of felt like they had a little bit more time and there was a little bit more of a grudge. But these two actually have a history because of obviously the Alvarado, Brazos, and Vianos have had this like ongoing war since the mid 80s. So, and they've constantly always bring it up. And the funny thing is that they have this in-ring feud, but in real life, they're probably like those families probably get along better than most. There's been stories of how when they talk about when they would have the guys talk about somebody when they passed away, they would always talk about, oh yeah, we used to hang out, we knew all this stuff. Like when you hear about the Alvarado family, one of the things that I always get a kick out of whenever I do research on luchadors is that you find out that the Alvarado family is one of the families that actually like used to house a lot of wrestlers that would travel and work in Mexico City. So you would have a lot of wrestlers staying with them while they were wrestling in the city. And then, obviously when they would leave, they'd come back and they'd have a place to stay. So you have a lot of guys and I'm pretty sure the Vianos probably stayed there a few times with the Alvarados. It's one of those, the family interactions are always cool, like not just in the ring, but out of the ring, because you hear a lot of these great stories about how, I grew up. Actually, one of the stories is, I remember there was I can't remember what wrestler it was. It might have been Black Man. One of the wrestlers who passed away recently, I think it might have been Black Man, who was talking about how when he first showed up to train in Mexico City, and when he showed up in the ring were very young members of the Alvarado family and the Vianos. And so you always had this story about how, they've always been tied together. I think it goes back to the 70s that these guys have been, very early 70s. So because I think even the fathers knew each other and got along. Obviously, Charito Cruz wasn't the big star that Rey Mendoza was, but still, they worked the Mexico City and they crossed paths, probably had numerous family dinners together. So that was always cool to me to like just hear all those stories. But this match was amazing. Wild brawl. Both men bled very early on. I thought it was kind of cool. Like at one point, Psycho Clown's his mask has a mohawk, and the mohawk just flew off. And so all of a sudden you just have the top of it, and it looks really it was kind of funny to see no mohawk on Psycho Clown. But yeah, they brought in Psycho Clown brought in the thumbtacks, and pretty much like Pagano, he ended up landing on them early on. I thought it was kind of cool. There was one sequence where he kind of slapped at the mat without and did a spot where he kind of forgot that the thumbtacks were on, and so when he slapped on the mat, he got thumbtacks and was like dealing with that. But I thought it was a really good match. So now we get Viano 4 versus Penta. That's the one match we know for sure is going to happen at the final Triplemania this year. So that should be another war, just because Viano 4 has been on a roll. For whatever reason, the Vianos have been between Viano 3, Viano 4, and Viano 5. Their big runs in preparing to drop their mask have been outstanding. I don't think anything tops Viano 3. I think if you're living in the moment, people are going to say the Viano 4, what's going on with Viano 4 being in the Ruleta. But I think you forget that Viano 3, it wasn't just like him going through a tournament to reach Atlantis. It was actually like a year-long feud, that was on television. They had skits, they had trios matches, they had the tag match. They had a singles match that was televised. They had a lot of build up to their final big mass match. So I think that, and then the Viano 5 one with him beating the winning Blue Panther's mask by surprise, which was a big shocker, and then eventually dropping it to his mask to Ultimo Guerrero was also kind of a very strong build to that as well. This one's probably, I would say, of the mass buildups, I think this would probably be my second favorite of the three brothers, but they've all been very solid. And then we get to the main event, which was Dragon Lee and Dralistico beating Johnny Caballero and Matt Hardy. Before the match, well, obviously they aired the vignette earlier in the match where he introduced Johnny Caballero as Johnny Hardy, which they introduced him as that as well during the match. There was a lot of stalling in this match early on, which was kind of annoying me. That went a little bit too long. But then once the match started going, it was really good. At one point, Dragon Lee hit a tope onto Johnny Caballero. He was sitting on the guardrail and he sent them into the crowd, which I thought was really cool. They missed the spot. The camera crew almost missed the dive that Dralistico did into the crowd onto Matt, Johnny, and Dragon Lee. But they did catch it as he fell in, but I think they missed the part where he was actually like climbing up and doing all the actually doing the dive. They just caught it like as he's falling in. I think that was the flaw in that spot. I thought the match itself was pretty good. I'm not a big Dralistico fan, but I think the fact that I think he's he went from being in one situation where he was in a good tag team with Caristico, now Mystico, and now he's teaming with his brother Dragon Lee. I think he's pretty much about at the same level as he was. Dragon Lee, I don't know, like I think he has potential to be a big single star, but maybe he's content. He's kind of joining that group of luchadors that I said in previous podcasts that kind of seem like they have this there's this bit of them wanting to team up with a family member because they see it as such a cool thing. We saw with Tejano Jr. when he left AAA and he said he wanted to team up more with his brother, Supernova. We're seeing it now in CMLL with Sobrano Jr. and Euphoria. Sobrano Jr. wanting to team up with his father, which we'll talk about in the next podcast. I'm basically just doing a podcast focusing on AAA this week, and then following show will be more CMLL related, and then we'll just start doing because I'm kind of thinking that might make more sense just because of how shows are airing nowadays, or when I actually get to watch them. I thought this was a really good match. Horrible finish. I thought the finish really killed it. So I think this match was kind of reaching very good, really good. I didn't think it was great. I just think, like, if you're going to get star ratings, maybe like a 4-star or like 4-star, and then the finish kind of dropped it down to 3.5 stars or 3.25 stars or 3 stars. If you're into stars, I would say it took it from being really good to just being good to me, because the finish basically, Johnny ended up, Matt Hardy bumped into Johnny Hardy as he was being thrown into the ropes, and Johnny Caballero got mad about it. And right when Matt Hardy was go for a twist of fate, Johnny Cabrera ran in and attacked him, and then took out Matt Hardy. So then that allowed the Hermanos Lee, Dragon Lee and Dralistico, to get the pin on him. Basically, Dragon Lee was covering Matt Hardy. This is where it looks bad. Dragon Lee goes for the pin on Matt Hardy, and then Dralistico climbs the ropes. Dragon Lee looks over and sees Dralistico climbing the ropes and doesn't move out of the way. And Dralistico kind of like looked like he was turning and didn't know what to do. So then Dralistico just dove onto Dragon Lee for the pin. So he dove onto Dragon Lee, who's basically on top of Matt Hardy. And then Dralistico lands on him. And then they go for the pin on Matt Hardy to get the win. Really weird finish. I thought that was like a dumb thing. Like you would have thought Dragon Lee would have moved out of the way and let Dralistico do the dive, or Dralistico says, gets off the corner and just goes over and joins in on pinning Matt Hardy. It looked weird. After the match, Johnny Cabrera attacked the Dragon Lee and Dralistico. Matt Hardy then made the save and then shook hands with Los Hermanos Lee. That was it. That was the end of the show. I thought this was a great show. The first hour and a half, you could probably skip, but once you get past that, about 3 hours of really good wrestling on this show. There's obviously that segment where they do the Conan, they honor Conan, and then the Taya interview segment, promo segment, which, I think that was about a 10-15 minute break, which actually I thought that was good as well. But for the most part, you got a lot of action on this show, and I thought it was great. To me, the best match on the show was probably a 3-way tie between the 5-way match for the AAA Latin America and then the Cruiserweight title, and the 2 Ruleta de la Muerte semifinal matches. I thought those were all really good. I thought the show had the production was really good. I think other than the mic, not miking the crowd, that being the bad part, everything else I thought was really good. I wish they would have mic'd the crowd. Don't know why they didn't. They don't do that. But yeah, I think that was but the video packages were great. Like I said, this was a really fun show. Highly recommend it. And now we have one match that we know is happening at Triplemania 30th, which is Chapter 3 in Mexico City on October 15th, later this year. Of course, the match we know is happening is Pentagon Jr. versus Viano 4 in a Ruleta de la Muerte final, mask versus mask match. I'm guessing Viano 4 is going to be the one that loses. This would actually be the big, because Pentagon Jr., as he said in interviews, he doesn't have that big defining mask or hair match. And I think this would be it. This would be a huge mask win just because of the way Viano 4 has been performing in this tournament. And the fact that he also has a very strong past as part of the Viano trio. And then obviously his time in WCW, working in every single promotion in Mexico. So he does have a very solid career. I think that's probably going to be one of the bigger mass matches. It's interesting this year. We're going to have a lot of interesting big mass matches. That one, we had the Flammer Chica Tormenta mass match, and then we're getting the CMLL one, which hopefully will be Stuka Jr. versus Atlantis Jr. It's kind of funny because people were saying that they don't think there's going to be CML's mass match can match what Pentagon Jr. versus Viano 4 could be. I would disagree just because I think for the most part, if there's some emotion, and I think between Stuka Jr. and Atlantis Jr., there would be enough emotion just because, and there's a certain way where they could actually build it up where it can actually be, and it's been built up very strongly, but the one big drawback for CML is that they're kind of setting up other stuff, and there's always that concern that they might not even go through with that match. It might end up being like a cage match or something. But I could see that if it's Stuka Jr. versus Atlantis Jr., I could see that being a very big mass match. Maybe not as big as Pentagon Jr. finally winning his big mass match, but it would still be up there. It'd be a top mass match. But besides Pentagon Jr. Viano 4, we really don't know what else is going to happen at Triplemania 30th in Mexico City. We're still a few months away, and they're already announcing matches for Verano Escándalo, which is going to happen in August. But just guessing, just off the top of my head, I just thought maybe what would be on a Triplemania 30th in Mexico City. Obviously, one of the things that came out of during this show was Taya challenging Flammer, the winner of the mass match, to a title match, willing to defend the title against the winner of the mass match. So we might get Taya versus Flammer, but then she also challenged Thunder Rosa. I would think Taya versus Flammer might be something that they might do on a TV taping or on a Verano Escándalo. I could see Taya versus Thunder Rosa maybe happening at the Mexico City show. That could be a possibility. Also, I would assume Pentagon Junior Viano 4 would probably not be the main event of Triplemania. I would think if they could get an AEW name for that show, like a big star, I could see whoever they bring in being in the main event, be it a tag match or a trios match or a singles match. I think that would be the main event more likely. And initially in my thought process was that maybe you still go with Pentagon Junior versus Viano 4 as a main event. But I also think you have so many people that are watching Triplemanias that are not normally watching AAA shows. There's a slight, well, I mean, to be fair, Pentagon Jr. is an AEW guy also, so you could probably go with that as the main event now that I think about it. But like, I would think you would want, like, say if they could get Kenny Omega. If Kenny Omega's healthy and he comes in for that show, and you do Kenny Omega versus El Vikingo, or you do Kenny Omega versus El Vikingo and Phoenix, or something like that, a three-way or something, or a trios match, or something that's involving all of those guys, or a six-man tag, or whatever. That would, to me, would be the main event, just because there's so much more of a stronger following for that Kenny Omega AEW guys in the match than, say, Penta versus Viano 4, which, people would be like, yeah, I don't know about that. But, to be fair, I wouldn't be shocked if there was actually enough of an entrance for the Pentagon Junior Viano 4 match, just because Pentagon Junior is an AEW guy who's actually a pretty big star, and then Viano 4 does have the past. Plus, there's a lot of American fans who remember him from WCW, so you might actually get that as well as an added attraction. We're obviously going to get Copa Triplemania on the next show as well. I could see them doing a Pagano versus Saber hair match. Another match that I think would be interesting, and I'm basing this off of the women's mass match early on the Tijuana show. Why not do a mixed tag match where you have actual couples within wrestling? So you could have Taya, you could have she could have Taya and Johnny Caballero in there as well. But let's say Tay Conti and Sammy Guevara defend the AAA mixed tag titles against Flammer and the Tiger and Chik Tormenta and Reiko. Reiko, who's not part of AAA, but he's married to Chik Tormenta, and he's an independent guy. You could bring him in for an appearance. Why not? I mean, that would be fun. And then obviously you would probably have another multi-person match where you could actually have highlight some of the top names you have in AAA's roster. But either way, I think that's the one thing I've noticed with AAA this year is that they've kind of been able to come up with some creative matches. They might not be flowing off of TV onto these big shows, but this Tijuana show was really good. I thought this was an excellent show, and I could see that being the case with the Mexico City show. I could also see maybe doing something with Dinamitas versus Rayo. Remember they were involved in the Ruleta match that Rayo was part of. Maybe they do something with Rayo being a big star in Arena, Mexico for so many years, for so many decades. Maybe and NGD also being a big name in that city as well. Maybe they do something like that as another match on that show. That could be something. Although I don't know if you would want. I don't know. Maybe you do Rayo teaming up with some of the winners of the Ruleta. Maybe he teams up with Psycho and Blue Demon Jr. versus NGD, or not even maybe Psycho and LA Park, or maybe Ultimo Dragon if you want to do that. But you have to have somebody that can work, so you'd have to have Psycho Clown or somebody like that can actually hold his own against the NGD group. But that would be fun. I think AAA's done pretty well with the Triplemania shows. If you're gonna go nitpick, the one thing, like I said, is always the audience not being properly mic'd. I think that's the one negative. And, really, if that's your only negative, that's actually you're doing a pretty good job. This last show was really good, and the previous one was good as well. That's it for this week. Be sure to check out LuchaWorld.com for all the latest news in Lucha Libre. For classic wrestling reviews, check out RetroWrestling.com. Also, check out the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel for podcast wrestling reviews. And for even more content, check out the LuchaWorld Patreon at patreon.com/LuchaWorld. Thanks again, everyone. Stay safe.